Chapter 1. Your understanding of the difference between good and bad strategy is essential to the growth of your business. The major goal for most businesses is profit-making and generation of revenue. Sadly, a lot of businesses run down because of their ignorance of the difference between a good strategy and a bad strategy. The former comes with experience, plan, focus, and the willingness to adapt to change seamlessly. Knowing when to strike and knowing when to create leverage for yourself are key points to note in good strategies. Bad strategies, however, are detrimental and damaging. Creating a successful business brand is not an easy task, but once you understand the techniques behind establishing a positive strategy, you should be able to create something unique for the competitive market. The major reason a lot of startups fail is because they've been unable to successfully establish the right business plan. This is so because they are devoid of good strategies. Building a business without a well-laid plan, actionable proximate objectives, and policy guidelines is a fast way of killing a business. Without a blend of personal, first-hand experience and a narrative flow that gives way for easy reading, Richard Rumelt has created a masterpiece that is recommended for everybody. If you want to learn about the best strategies on how to be very successful, then this is the right material for you. In this bite-sized summary, you'll learn the importance of establishing a good business network and having a business plan that will make your work easier. Chapter 2. A good strategy sometimes comes unexpectedly from simple sources. Good plans are hard to come by, particularly in the business world. Apple was on the verge of bankruptcy in 1995 within a matter of months, but the company was able to turn its fortune around. The appointment of Steve Jobs as the new CEO marked the start of a new era for Apple. Steve Jobs had a simple but powerful approach. Apple created far too many goods and did nothing to educate customers about the difference between them. He consolidated Apple's many businesses into a manageable size and reduced wasteful and needless spending. When you have excellent plans, your company has a natural edge that gives you an advantage over competitors. Steve Jobs was able to give Apple a strategy and focal point by concentrating on a few specific items. As a result, Apple has grown into one of the world's most powerful corporations. Jobs' approach was straightforward, yet it caught competing businesses off guard. A good strategy honestly acknowledges the challenges being faced and provides an approach to overcoming them. Richard P. Rumelt. Another basic but effective approach is to look at things from a new viewpoint. Around 1030 BC, a teenage shepherd named David slew Goliath, a 9-foot cruel giant, according to the Bible. Many people thought the narrative was about a miracle, but it was really about power, accuracy, frailty, and strength. As a shepherd kid, David had little chance in battle against Goliath, but what the others didn't realize was that he had found Goliath's vulnerability. David was an expert slingshotter as a shepherd. When armor was given to him, he declined since he knew it would slow him down. David killed Goliath by launching a stone from his slingshot at the giant's skull. Goliath's armor didn't cover his forehead, which David recognized as a vulnerability. The David-Goliath analogy proves that when you look at things from a different viewpoint than the traditional one, you may find power. Chapter 3. A bad strategy is not as a result of a lack of good plan. It's the misconception of a supposedly good strategy. Bad strategies will pull down an organization, no matter how successful it is. They come in the form of bad decisions, negative attitudes, procrastination, miscalculations, misconceptions, etc. 4 major factors should be examined to detect a bad strategy. It's not a lack of excellent strategy that causes bad strategy. It is caused by the negative consequences and misunderstanding of a seemingly good plan. To identify a poor approach, 4 main aspects should be considered. Fluff. This is a kind of garbage concept and notion that hides behind overly inflated phrases to give the appearance of high-level thinking. Failure to rise to the occasion. A poor approach fails to identify or define the problem. If you don't identify the problem, you won't be able to come up with a plan or strategy to solve it. Goals are often confused with strategy. Many individuals make the mistake of replacing poor objectives with poor methods. A lot of poor tactics are just ideas that don't have a plan on how to deal with the problem. Strategic goals that are poor. When you neglect to address important problems or when such difficulties are impractical, something happens. Detecting a poor approach greatly improves your chances of converting it to a good one. When you're reluctant to put in the effort to discover a decent plan, you'll end up with a bad strategy. A good approach requires concentration, commitment, and perseverance. All of these things can make for difficult decisions. Bad tactics are the result of people's reluctance to make these decisions. The effects of bad methods and principles will always reflect in the productivity of an organization. This will be evident in the workers' attitudes, as well as the rate at which an organization's revenue will drop. Once the work environment is unhealthy, there won't be any enthusiasm among the workers to make things work. This is why the role of a transformational leader is essential. If a leader fails to implement good strategies, the future of the organization they lead will remain bleak. Did you know, according to Harvard Business Review, 60% of leaders worry about their employees' perception of transparency, while 27% are sure that their lack of transparency creates a competitive advantage. Chapter 4. A good strategy builds its foundation, the combination of various strategic models that can transform an organization. A good strategic model is the kernel, which is a logical structure that builds on three elements: a diagnosis, a guiding policy, and coherent action. Kernels can be assessed in three ways. A well-defined assessment that reveals the actual nature of the challenges. A great leader clarifies reality's complexities by recognizing key elements of the issue. A set of guidelines for coping with the problem. This is a well-thought-out method for dealing with or overcoming the difficulties in an organization. A series of well-coordinated activities intended to carry out the guiding policy. These are actions that are coordinated with one another to achieve the guiding policy's goals. A transformational leader should have a general overview of the overall situation, a guiding policy that serves as a blueprint, and a set of coordinated activities to maintain and improve the system in the future. He should leverage his team's willingness to learn and participate. Leverage is a strategic building act that draws power from activity, energy, and understanding in an organization. Leverage entails more than simply using a lever to move something. According to Archimedes, one of the greatest minds of all time, when you place a well-measured lever and a strong fulcrum into the hands of the right person, they can move the globe. Knowing where, when, and how to apply the necessary force is what leverage is all about. Anticipation, a thorough look into the key areas, and focused attempts to make it work are all part of strategic leverage. Strategic leadership is the process through which leaders create a vision for their company that allows it to adapt to a competitive market. Knowing when to use strategic leverage improves your chances of making an impact. When it comes to business, a company must know when to be weak and when to be powerful. They must understand how to maintain control over their customers, as well as the strategic leverage they may use to remain competitive in the market. Chapter 5. To motivate people, a leader has to set a feasible time frame for the accomplishment of an idea or goal. When you establish a goal, always make sure you have the resources to achieve it. Unfortunately, many companies do not think in this manner. When President John F. Kennedy declared that American astronauts would arrive on the moon by 1960, he was establishing a short-term goal. While it may seem unachievable to the untrained eye, President Kennedy was certain that the United States had the means to carry it off. Setting a goal without the necessary resources exposes you to disappointment and puts your business in danger. Setting a realistic deadline for achieving a goal increases your chances of success. Try to make a table with all of your plans and prioritize them. This will assist you in creating a working atmosphere and making it simpler to establish a specific strategy for your company plan. It will also help you expose the limiting factors and the redundancies in your organization. Limiting factors are similar to weak links in a chain. A weak link in a chain cannot be fixed by strengthening other connections. Things that decrease the value of a product are known as limiting factors. A lovely home constructed next to a loud motorway has a stumbling block, the highway. It's pointless to reinforce minor parts of a product if the primary component is prone to failure. You have a better chance of becoming extremely successful if you can identify and remove restricting variables, otherwise known as limiting factors, by building a better team. If you're part of a chain-linked organization, it's extremely simple to become trapped. To operate well, a chain-linked organization requires maximum effort from all proportions. When your department makes a deliberate effort to strengthen its own connection, other departments must match that effort. Otherwise, catastrophe may ensue. Not receiving equal effort may lead to dissatisfaction and energy resentment, which is bad for any organization's growth. To break free from a chain-linked issue, a significant amount of work must be expended to synchronize thoughts across all levels of an organization. For the organization's overall benefit, each department must strive for excellence. Chapter 6. Using design helps you to map out strategic positions for victory. In the Bronze Age, about 210 BC, the Roman Empire ruled over a large part of Italy. After losing a battle to the Romans, Hannibal, a strategic warrior, wanted to restore the prestige of the ancient city of Carthage by regaining control of the southern Mediterranean. Hannibal collected an army and marched it to Spain through Gaul and then to Italy, where he conquered a few cities near Rome. The Roman Senate, fed up with Hannibal's repeated assaults, sent some nominated consuls with 8 legions to fight him in an open field. In comparison to Hannibal's army of 55,000 soldiers, the Romans claimed an army of 85,000 troops. The Romans were anticipated to prevail since they had 30,000 more troops, but this was not the case. Hannibal had developed a combat plan that enticed his foes to assault in a haphazard manner, eventually trapping them in the center. By the time the Romans understood what was going on, they were encircled by Hannibal's troops, who were so close together in the center that they couldn't draw their weapons. Following Hannibal's triumph, he was dubbed the father of strategy, and other countries began to imitate his tactics. Designs are strategic elements or methods needed for creating a successful brand and remaining relevant in the business world. Hannibal's triumph at Cannae was the product of forethought, foresight, and the planning of synchronized action, all of which points to design. A leader must have a design that acts as a guide to decide future victories, whether via spontaneity or premeditation. Designs are like weapons. You can use them to launch attacks or defend yourself. When you have a well-planned design, it becomes easier to implement your methods. When someone says managers are decision makers, they are not talking about master strategists, for a master strategist is a designer. Richard Rumelt. The importance of design in the corporate world cannot be overstated. Producers must determine what appeals to customers and how to make the product seem marketable to end users. Chapter 7. It's essential to know how to capture a particular part of the market where you can supply more value than other competitors. Apple's goods do not sell as many units as those of other big corporations, but they produce more money. This is because Apple devised a business model that enables them to retain their focus while still maintaining negotiating leverage with its customers. Businesses that lack focus lose negotiating power since their goods are now strongly affected by what customers desire and the greatest price they are prepared to pay for them. Having a focus allows you to create a brand that is distinct and unique to your target market. Expansion may be beneficial to a company, but it does not always imply growth. If caution is not taken when a business buys another company, particularly a competitor, it becomes difficult to sustain. When it comes to acquisition, growth may be deceiving. You'll almost certainly overpay to buy another firm or business, particularly if it's public. Purchasing a business and operating it in its former capacity will almost always result in a loss. Unless you can add value to what is already there, an acquired company will deteriorate, dragging others down with it. Most businesses concentrate on too many objectives at once, causing their market to depreciate in value. When a company lacks concentration, it is difficult to come up with a cutting-edge innovation that will entice customers to buy the product, regardless of the high price. Businesses should concentrate on a few aspects of their goods and channel the energy they would have put into additional items into these few areas. Chapter 8. Healthy expansions does not come through large mergers or acquisitions. It comes from successful invention. When Telecom Italia and Cables and Wireless suggested merging, the sole rationale provided was that it would increase both businesses' cash flow. As a large telecommunications business, Telecom Italia, like Cables and Wireless, had plenty of cash flow. Thus, a merger made little sense. Connections and Wireless possessed the cables and resources that Telecom Italia required to transfer its network operations across the continent. A contract could have easily accomplished what they required a merger for. A merger would have been meaningless because it would cause a clash of work ethics between the employees of both organizations. Sometimes it's not about doing something big, it's about doing something simple. Growth may not always imply expansion, yet healthy growth is required for a successful expansion. A company must be able to spot flaws and exploit them to gain an edge. To get a competitive edge, your product must be one of a kind in such a manner that rivals will find it difficult, if not impossible, to duplicate it. To further explain the importance of real growth, take this scenario for instance. When Susan, an investor, was consulting a new firm that made microporous materials, she said it wasn't easy going from creating a product to building a company. The firm had created a product that would have a significant impact on the apparel industry, and they wanted to establish their own business since they were so proud of their work. Susan, one of their most ardent supporters, had urged them against it, stating that they had an edge in production and that forming a business or creating a clothing company would amount to dabbling in an unknown and competitive industry. It is critical to understand that some ideas are better sold to existing companies. Many startup companies don't work because they have failed to realize that they do not have the financial or economic power to compete in the market. Because everyone has an edge in some way, advantages are relative. What distinguishes yours is your ability to utilize it. You must concentrate on the areas where you have an advantage and avoid the areas where you do not. Switching from a product line may be appealing, but it can also be disastrous. Chapter 9. Gaining higher ground in a competitive market increases your chances of victory in a more stable defense. In business, a higher ground is a vantage point that puts you above others in a competitive business environment. In the military, for example, an undefended higher ground is the ideal location for soldiers. It is simpler for them to attack opponents here, while opponents find it difficult to attack them. The problem with undefended higher terrain is finding one in the first place. The development of a business is hampered by a lack of long-term planning and the inability to anticipate the effect of a change. Knowing when to attack and how to avoid being hit is essential for a strong strategic stance. The first step to gaining this vantage point is to build it for yourself via pure creativity. This can be done by developing new business ideas that may put you on the map and make you a household brand in a crowded industry. Exploiting a wave of change is another method to gain undefended higher ground. You must seize the tsunami of change while it is still young. If you don't, you risk getting swept aside by a bigger force. When you plan ahead, it is easier to beat your opponents because they cannot anticipate your next move. Inertia and entropy are two unpleasant things to have in any organization. Inertia represents the lack of motivation and progress, while entropy brings about a gradual decline. However, your knowledge of these two terms should assist you in making measured decisions on how to take advantage of a circumstance while also avoiding a setback. Understanding inertia is particularly important because it enables you to capitalize on your rival's reluctance or inability to shift. Conclusion. There are good and terrible strategies in every aspect of life. As previously said, a plan is just a hypothesis, and the possibility of making a mistake cannot be ruled out. Understanding what constitutes excellent and poor tactics can assist you in making better business choices in the present and future. Always create a list of the most essential things in your life, since it allows you to see things from multiple perspectives. A smart strategy is the outcome of a thorough, independent study and assessment of circumstances in order to achieve a better goal. Poor strategy is the result of a hasty, unprepared assessment of a problem without making the appropriate choices. Knowing when to keep your cool after you've achieved success is critical to the success of your company. If extreme caution is not used, a little controversy may derail years of hard effort. Belief in social herding makes it tough to recognize your own flaws, since society has conditioned you to think everything is okay, even when it isn't. Failure to learn from previous mistakes may lead to the complete failure of your company. A freshly created strategy is an empirical hypothesis in which leaders learn new things in order to know whether to accelerate, slow down, or adapt. Business is a risk, and risks develop into strategy. This isn't to suggest that chances should never be taken. A measured risk is what a smart business person should take in order to create a successful plan. Try this. Make a comprehensive list of the things that are most important in your life and start working on the first ones. The fun is not in the list, but in the realization that you now have a plan you can work with.